Heat are 21 games into the regular season schedule. That's Pat Riley's benchmark to evaluate what this team really is. So we'll be doing the same. Is Miami really good enough to contend this season?
I guess that's what we'll find out.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang and become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up for the Locked On Heat text line with the link in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. Jam-packed show for you today, and we really mean it. We are through the first 21 games of the season, about the first quarter of the season. We'll hand out some first quarter awards here in a second, and then ask some of the biggest remaining questions after these first 21 games. But David, I want to go back to something that we talked about before the start of the season. We looked ahead at the schedule and how tough it is. And we said, maybe 7-14 through the first 21 games. And that said more about the schedule than it did this Miami Heat team, even though we did have our questions about this Heat roster, especially after Tyler Herro underwent some offseason surgery. Well, we said 7-14, possibly best case scenario. Turns out they're 14-7.
Slightly
and
better.
It isn't one of those situations where you look at the schedule and you're like, wow, that's a tough schedule, and then it's not as hard. Nope. It's been harder than we thought. The Heat have played the third hardest schedule in the league so far, according to Strength of Schedule. They're 14-7. They've done it without Tyler Herro for the first 17 games. They're 14-7. They've missed Bam Adebayo, Norm Powell for several games. They're 14-7. They're introducing a new offensive system, unlike anything this team and this franchise has ever played. They're 14-7. You mentioned this in the cold open, David. Pat Riley likes to take these first 20-ish games and use it as a benchmark. We're through the first quarter of the season. What should he be thinking about this team right now?
An interesting question. I think you look at this team, and ultimately what this franchise wants is to contend for a title. So I think assessing this roster and what they're capable of, my thought process is, you and I were optimistic about this group. I think the front office was optimistic about this group. But now that they've seen what the product has actually been, I think there's reason to believe that they're even more optimistic. Now, this isn't reporting or anything like that, but my feeling is that their 14-7 record shows this front office that this was a much better group than previously had anticipated. Because, and I think it's all about how to, and I think Eric Spoelstra has talked about it. I think even LeBron James recently spoke about it. Tailoring the offense and the way that this team runs their offense based on the personnel that they've incorporated, that they've assembled here. And that being the case, they knew the pieces were there, but I don't think anybody predicted to this level that they would be as good once you put them all together. The sum has been so much better than the sum of its parts, or whatever. Whatever the expression is. They've been really good and exceeded expectations. And so when Pat Riley is looking at this group, I think the idea is whether or not he has to make this group better or whether or not he can afford to stand pat, because ultimately a title is what's going to define success for this franchise. It's not going to be anything short. And you kind of, I was thinking about this even before we started recording. In a way, although Miami had incredible success, 2 runs to the finals, great playoff runs during the Jimmy Butler iteration of this team, this in a way almost feels more sustainable. Like it's been built a little bit even more holistically than that previous team. Because I've talked about it before. In 2019, when Jimmy Butler was brought onto this team, it was similar in the degree that nobody expected that group to be any good either. A lot of people dismissed Jimmy Butler going there. He's coming to South Beach to retire, et cetera, et cetera. The move was widely panned, and Philadelphia was graded more highly by many media pundits for getting the better end of the deal than with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler was labeled a malcontent. He was a little bit older. Maybe he wouldn't necessarily be any good in Miami. It didn't seem like it made a lot of sense. And then he joins his team, and of course, they wind up having 2 runs to the finals, as I said before. But one of the things that always struck me about that group in 2019 is that they've always been operating on 2 separate timelines in terms of having achieved far more success a lot more quickly than even the front office expected them to.
Mm-hmm.
This feels a little different. This is a group that's been put together and works better, is more balanced, not just on paper, but on the floor itself. And you've got a little bit of everything. And to me, I don't think there's any obvious weakness. So when you're looking at this group and determining whether or not you're actually building a contender, I think Pat Riley is looking at what this group really needs and helping them to get to that next level. Because I think, again, having exceeded expectations and the way that this group works together, they're not reliant on any one player the way that past group was on Jimmy Butler to have that kind of postseason explosion that he did. This is more, like I said, organically balanced. It's more egalitarian the way they do. And I think poised for more success.
That's a strong statement. Those Jimmy Butler Heat never won a championship, but they were in 2 NBA finals. They won 2 Eastern Conference titles. That's a pretty
But there was always something missing. There was always something missing. It was like, oh, they're a superstar.
Well, to your point,
away.
it never felt like they were all the way in on any individual year of the Jimmy Butler era, and they just sort of found their way in the NBA Finals, whether it was in 2020 or 2023. The only year they were fully all in was in 2022, and I still think that that's the best Heat team, despite the fact that they didn't make the finals. The best Jimmy Butler era Heat team.
Right.
You said there's no weakness, and I mean, this is a team that's 4th right now in defensive rating. Offensively, they're starting to climb up a little bit more in terms of efficiency. We know how many points that they could score with their breakneck pace that they're playing at, but there was obviously room for improvement offensively, and I think Tyler Herro is going to be helping that. It already is helping that. And I know this is not what you meant, but the obvious thing that this team needs is that superstar player, right? Like, it's really cool that we're doing this everybody eats thing right now, but if you really want to win at a high level in the NBA, you got to have a guy. Like, I still don't see the team that's ever won at a high level without a guy. And especially recently, like, even if you want to point to the Pacers last year, Halliburton, I think, was a top 10 player in the league last year. And
No, he struggled mightily. Like, they were bad last year. They struggled. Yeah, the Pacers were bad last year. But it all
the Pacers team that was in the NBA Finals was bad last year?
They were bad during the regular season. He was bad during the regular season.
For the start of the regular season. And then at the end, they figured it out. And I think by the playoffs, that guy was one of the best 10 players on the planet, no?
Well, if you're looking at it through that, yeah. But, I mean, again, isn't that what Jimmy Butler was? Like, in the argument.
But that's my point is, who on this roster can reach that kind of level? I don't think there's anybody.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
If you're framing it that way, that I get. All right.
And then where would you put Halliburton right now? Where would you rank Halliburton? Health, assuming full health, he comes back the way that he was. Where would you place him? Just among top 15? Fair?
Yeah, that seems right. Yeah.
The Heat have nobody even sniffing top 15 right now. And so I think there's a level of guy that they need that they don't have. Now, that's fine, right? We can have nice things. We don't have to break them. It's okay. This is, we're coming out of the Jimmy Butler era, and we're on our way to maybe finding that guy. But if there's another, I think this is the proof of concept that this thing works. And if you're able to go out and get that guy and place him on this roster, and by the way, other stars around the league looking at what's going on right now in Miami, be like, I want to play there. I've always wanted to play there because it's Miami and it's the Heat and they have a track record for success. But now this actually looks fun to play in.
Right.
So now they have this new selling point there, which I think is another thing. If I'm Pat Riley, I'm looking at these first 21 games. I'm like, oh, there's another way that we could sell stars on coming to Miami now that we've never had. We've never had this before. The closest we've ever had is when LeBron James was here. That's the most fun we've ever had playing basketball. And now we're having that level of fun again. If I were going to poke holes in this first 21 games in terms of is it real, is it not real? I think it's real. But if I'm going to poke a hole in it, they have been the beneficiary of some three-point shooting luck. Right now, Miami is 5th in three-point shooting percentage, which I think can be stable. They're about 38%. There's good three-point shooters on this team. I think that's mostly stable. They're also 1st in opponent three-point shooting percentage, meaning opponents have shot the worst percentage against the Heat than they have any other team in the league this year. That's not sustainable, especially when you look at the fact that they've given up the most open threes in the league. And if I'm Eric Spoelstra, that's the thing I'm going back on and being like, this is the thing I don't want to come to roost at any point this year. We got to tighten up our three-point shooting percent defense. Now, some of that is because of the pace. That's why they've given up so many threes. But even as a percentage of like the share of shots that they're giving up, that still has to come down a little bit. And you also are going to assume that the opponents that you're playing are going to shoot the ball better at some point. But I also think that we've seen this Heat team win in a lot of different ways. So I'm not overly concerned with that, David.
Okay. I mean,
let's move on. NBA first quarter awards. Who has been the Heat's best offensive player and the best defensive player so far this season? We hand out some first quarter awards after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1984. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. And that's why the Game Time app is so clutch, because it finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open up, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Isn't that a dream come true to be able to attend one of the biggest global events? I mean, this is bigger than anything. You think Heat games are great to go to, concerts that you've been to. Nothing beats the World Cup experience, and it's coming to South Florida. And that just makes it that much better. And if you want to get tickets, well, then Game Time is the app that you need to get you in there. And there's so many benefits to doing it. They've got their prices set so you know exactly what you're going to be paying for. No hidden fees built into anything. You just pick a game, you tap a section, and you have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion and no hunting for the fine print. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets for any event, especially the World Cup. Every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. That's Game Time. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Thanks again for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Let's get into some first quarter awards, 21 games through the season. Let's start with Offensive Player of the Quarter for the Miami Heat, David. And I think this one's pretty easy. I think it has to be Norm Powell. I don't think there's another option here.
No, you could make a case for Jaime.
Yep.
Because he's provided that burst, and Herro unfortunately has just missed too many games, but in his return, he's been excellent, and I think he does deserve some consideration just because of how good he's been, but he's just missed far too much time. It is Norm. Like, he's clearly been the barometer for this team, and he has helped carry this group. And you know what? Kind of tying it back to the first question, or our first segment conversation, is Powell capable, this version of Norm Powell, kind of fully unlocked and enabled in the way he's never been in any previous stop in his career? Can he be that guy? Because I don't think anybody truly expected Jimmy Butler to reach even the heights that he had when he was here in Miami, based on what we've seen from him in Minnesota or Philadelphia, and even during his stint in Chicago. But I don't know that Norm has ever been that guy either, and I wonder whether or not you see him as, is he that guy who can have that potential to be one of the top, and as you said, made the comparison with Halliburton, can he be a top 15 player on the planet?
We had a conversation a week or so ago of, we've never seen anything like this. A guy at 31 and then 32 years old having his career best seasons back to back, right? Last year for him was a career best season at that point, and now he's surpassing that this season. I don't know the last time we've seen anything like this, right? Yet I just, because of that, because of the lack of precedent, I guess I shouldn't rule anything out on one hand, and on the other hand, I can't predict. Look, he's averaging 25 points per game. It would be the most a player has averaged in a Heat jersey since LeBron James left. That's what Norm Powell is doing. It sounds like a lot of points. It is a lot of points. It's not that many points in today's NBA. Luka Doncic is leading the league at 35 points per game, 10 more points per game than Norm Powell. The way that the tempo of across the league right now, there's an inflation on points now. 25 points per game is what 20 points per game used to be. We have 5 different players averaging more than 30 points, and then 3 more players averaging 29, almost 30 points per game. I mean, that's the kind of player it takes. You kind of just need that one guy, unless it's, again, like a Halliburton, who is just off the charts in the points that he creates because of the playmaking part of it. The Heat don't have that guy. They have this offense because they don't have that guy, right? If they had that elite playmaker, they wouldn't have to run this offense. But
Yeah,
it is, I think defensively, they're really strong. Offensively, if Norm Powell is your best offensive player, but also you've got Tyler Herro, but also you got Jaime Jaquez Jr., and then Bam's got the games where he could be super aggressive like he was against the Clippers and things like this. Andrew Wiggins certainly has his nights. It's an everybody eats egalitarian style offense, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But in terms of any one of these guys kind of hitting that height, I don't really see it for anybody. I think they could all take leaps, right? And we'll see what that does. But in terms of hitting that sort of top 10-ish player zone, I have a hard time seeing that.
yeah, no, I do too. It doesn't feel sustainable because we've never seen anything. But that's the whole thing with doing something innovative, is that it doesn't feel like it's possible until you're the first one to do it. So you wonder whether or not Miami could somehow rewrite a script that seems like it's been pretty stale over the last few years, not just in terms of what this team is capable of, but even just expectations for it's almost become so cliche that it's a superstar driven league and everything else like that. And could Miami be the first team to potentially win or compete at such a high level without said superstar?
I mean, the one benefit that they do have is playing in the Eastern Conference, right?
Yeah.
We'll touch on that here in a second. But Norm Powell gets the award for Offensive Player of the Quarter for the Heat. The Heat are 9.6 points per 100 possessions better offensively with Norm Powell on the court. That is first on the Heat. His turnovers, he keeps them low. Free throw attempts are high. It's a career high for him. Miami as a team attempts more free throws when he's on the court because of that. So he's not only scoring a bunch of points, but he's doing it efficiently, and he's doing it while limiting turnovers and keeping free throws. He's kind of, in some ways, replaced Jimmy Butler in this offense, in an offense that makes sense for somebody like Norm Powell. So that's not an exaggeration. That's how good he's been for this team in the regular season. That doesn't necessarily mean that he could hit those heights in the postseason, but who knows? Defensive Player of the Quarter has got to be Bam. We pretty much saw the proof of this with Bam on the court. I think he's having a Defensive Player of the Year for the NBA caliber type of season so far. So certainly he's been Miami's best defender. But we really saw this when he was out and how much they struggled.
I'm kind of thinking that Bam, he has been phenomenal, and I know that Miami definitely missed him when he was out. But I also feel, I don't know, maybe I'm just not paying attention as closely, but it almost feels like he just hasn't stood out in any way defensively, aside from what we're so used to. And that's part of the knock on like the voting process, is that we're all kind of like, oh, ho hum, a guy who can guard 1 through 5, no big deal. And so you kind of have just taken for granted what it is that Bam does defensively. And I feel like maybe I'm falling into that same trap, because I think you can make an argument for Davion Mitchell, and I think you can make an argument for Kel'el Ware too, based on what we've seen for him as a rebounder and shot blocker. I think the correct answer is still Bam Adebayo. I'll be 100% honest with you. Yeah. But I like what Davion provides along the perimeter, and I think what Kel'el has done at the rim certainly would make this at the halfway mark. I think it'll be a much more nuanced conversation than just, well, Bam is Bam. I think by the halfway mark, I think you'll see other players step up to that point where they can help carry some of the load for Bam, so he doesn't have to do as much.
If we had a perimeter defender award of the quarter and an interior defender, then it would be Davion on the perimeter and Bam. Davion's been awesome. He'll come up later. But Bam, opponents are averaging 10.2%. Their offensive rebound percentage drops by 10.2% with Bam on the court. That's one of the things. The Heat cannot defensive rebound without Bam. Right. Then they become the best defensive rebounding team in the league with Bam on the court. That is a crazy difference. A 10.2% difference is the difference between the worst and the best. That's value. That's ending defensive possessions. He has switched 1 through 5. We've seen him he is a parent that is taking away a grounded child's toy. That's what he is on every offensive possession. An offense comes down, they want to get into something, and Bam just takes it away. And he just does it over and over and over again. If you watch these games and you just see what the opposing team wants to get into, Bam takes a right step in the right direction, reads it, he's ahead of the play, and he's like, nope, you're not going to do that. And then they're forced to go into something else that they didn't want to go to in the first place. So he's been phenomenal. My favorite Bam stat of all,
Yeah.
he's only averaging 1.3 personal fouls per game. As a center, being asked to do all the things that he's doing, he's not fouling. He's defending everybody at an elite level, and he's not sending anybody to the free throw line. That's how it's done, Jaren Jackson Jr. This is how you don't have to foul to be elite defensively. Bam is the best in the league at that specific thing. He's better at Wembanyama. He's better than Chet. He's better than Jackson. He's better than Mobley at defending at a top 1% level while never fouling.
I feel like that almost shifted last year after he came off of that Olympic run and started getting a little bit more superstar recognition. And there's nothing to actually, I think, support that other than just my own eyewitness account. But it felt like he was avoiding a lot of the same things that had happened early in his career. We're still allowing him to be extremely physical, but even earlier in his career, there were games, and I'm probably jinxing him even as I'm saying this, so apologies in advance, man. There were games where he would rack up 2-3 fouls in the first quarter or so, in the first half, certainly. And then it's like, oh, Bam Adebayo's in foul trouble. I don't think we've seen that from him over the last year and a half. Like it just feels like he's not getting called as much. So I wonder how much of it is the referees. This might be just my opinion. The referees kind of respect
maybe a little star whistle respect. Yeah.
And versus him actually improving and avoiding any kind of foul contact because. It doesn't feel like
it's both. I think it's both, and good, right? Like you need a little bit of respect from the officials. That's how the stars do it. He doesn't really get that star kind of treatment offensively, but maybe he gets it a little bit defensively. Maybe it's 10% of it. Let's blow through a couple more of these awards. Hustle Award. The Hustle Award goes to Davion Mitchell. And I think an honorable mention could be made for Pelle Larsson, potentially, maybe even Drew Smith. But Davion is just checking every box across all the hustle stats. He's third on the team in loose balls recovered, second in charges drawn, second in deflections, and surprisingly third in screen assists behind Bam and Ware. This is not a team that sets a ton of screens, but Davion is willing to come up and, hey, you need a little help, you need a little nudge. I'm going to just throw my body into somebody, and I'm going to set you free. He's just across the board. He's in the top 3 in every single hustle stat. Nobody else on the Heat can claim that. So Davion Mitchell, Hustle Award.
Yeah, sorry. We like Drew and what he's been able to do, and certainly has had a great bounce back and everything else like that. He's incredibly impactful, I think, in his limited opportunity. But Davion gets more playing time, and the impact is just as great. And he's absolutely turned a leaf here, and good for him because I think we both really liked him over the first few years of his career, and to see him kind of find a place where he can flourish. Those are success stories that kind of get swept under the rug, and not many people, like from a player who's kind of, he wasn't bad. He just wasn't good. He fell short of the promise of being a top 10 pick in the draft. And I think people kind of just said, oh, well, what does he really do? And what he really does is what we've seen from him in Miami. He shoots the ball well. He attacks relentlessly when it comes to the rim. And then when it comes to his defense, he's just absolutely thriving, hounding people, fighting over screens, drawing charges. It feels like every center who sets a screen on Davion throws that extra little hip where he gets kind of caught on that, but he's done such a good job of drawing those fouls too. And I hope he gets more of those calls, because it feels like every time he fights so vigorously over the screens that he should get that kind of recognition.
Most improved goes to Kel'el Ware. We've done enough talking about him. That's an obvious one. Best lineup: Davion Mitchell, Tyler Herro, Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, and Bam Adebayo. In other words, the new starting lineup. They are plus 13 per 100 possessions and the third most possessions on the team. It's by far Miami's highest usage, highest net rating lineup. So congratulations to Kel'el Ware and the starting lineup for our last awards. All of that said, are the Heat a real threat to come out of the Eastern Conference? Our biggest questions after the first quarter of the season are next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with the Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. You always knew the game, but never had the dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now you can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. We'll be right back.
"21 games in the books, first quarter of the season in the books, David. That means we have 3 more quarters of this season left to play. What have we learned? We've talked about that all episode long so far. These are the biggest remaining questions that we have after the first quarter of the season. And the first one to me, David, is we know this new Heat offense. We're excited about this new Heat offense. Will teams eventually slow down the Heat's new offense? We've started to see a little bit of this with the zone. No team has played against zone more than the Miami Heat. They're starting to crack it a little bit. We have seen teams every once in a while over the last couple of weeks slow down this Heat offense, but we've also seen this Heat team win in a couple of different ways. What do you think about this?
I think we're going to see versions of this where teams will figure out something, but I just think it's going to have to depend on Miami absolutely falling apart from the 3-point line, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think this team is just too potent. Not just, and it's easy to say that based on the 140-point explosion that we saw yesterday against the Los Angeles Clippers, but I honestly think that this team is a much better, much more potent offense than we've seen in so many years from this particular group. So I think you're going to have off nights, a combination of teams keying in on what they do and focusing their defense on stopping or slowing things down for Miami, flattening their offense to a huge degree. And I think Miami's going to have some off shooting nights. It's bound to happen. It's an 82-game season, and we see it all the time. But given that, I still think that Miami's going to be able to flourish offensively. I think they're still going to play to their strengths. And I think the incorporation of Tyler Herro and bringing him back and seeing him thrive the way he has, where he doesn't even have to be the primary guy offensively, it just provides even more balance to a team that was already really good offensively. And you're seeing growth from other players as well. Like, I think as much as maybe playoff success may hinge on having that guy, the number one type superstar, I think the regular season success can be built on a premise of an egalitarian, everyone eats type of offense. And I think it's going to continue to thrive throughout the season. So I'm not really all that concerned. And maybe I should be. And maybe this feels like just one big Gucci waiting to happen. But to me, I get the sense that Miami's going to be able to figure it out, because this feels sustainable in a way that I wasn't prepared for it to be so. Like I knew we would see a variation of this going to the season, but this feels like it's just much better. Like I'm encouraged by what we've seen so far. And
me too. And I think there's layers that Eric Spoelstra is going to add to this. You don't think that Eric Spoelstra has something up his sleeve? Of course he does. He always does, right? And everybody's been talking about, hey, they're not running any pick and roll. They're averaging 10 pick and rolls per game, which is the lowest since we've been tracking this stuff. And even when they do run a pick and roll, it almost feels like it's an accident. Yeah. But what if they do just start running more pick and roll? You know, we've seen it a couple times. Like there was a few games ago where the first play out of the game was a pick and roll between Andrew Wiggins and Bam Adebayo, and the opposing team was like, "Whoa, I didn't see that one coming." They're surprised. Eric Spoelstra is not like not agnostic. He's not like orthodox about this system. He's not going to be like, hey, no screens. That's how we live now. He's going to say, no, if I think a screen's going to help us win this game, we're going to set a screen right now. So I think that Spo's going to have a lot of things up his sleeve here, and they'll continue to evolve this offense. They'll have off nights, like you said, but overall, yeah, I think the Heat finish the season number 1 in pace. I think they finish with a higher offensive rating than they have right now, which is about the middle of the league. And I think they'll still be one of the best 5, 6, 7 defenses in the league when it's all said and done. Are the Heat a real threat to win the East is our other big question here. And maybe this is what this is all kind of getting to.
Yeah.
So before talking about the Heat part of this, just a look at the standings as we're recording here. Detroit is first at 17-4. Then it's the Knicks at 13-6. Then it's the Heat at 14-7. Toronto 14-7. Orlando's been making a run. They're 13-8. Cleveland's 13-9. Atlanta's 13-9 and playing pretty well lately. Boston's over there at 11-9. Philadelphia's at 10-9. Chicago's 9-11. So that is the playoff seeds plus the play-in current seeding right now. Milwaukee on the outside looking in at 9-13. They're a team that could potentially jump back into that play-in mix and maybe even sort of the end of the playoffs here if they can ever get things right over there. But I look at this Eastern Conference and I think it's even more wide open than what we thought it was going into the season.
Yeah.
I heard this. Zach Lowe asked Mo Dakhil on his show this week, and I thought it was a really interesting way to frame things in the Eastern Conference. If you had to choose between the two favorites coming into the year, the Knicks and the Cavs, or the field, to win the East, would you take one of the Knicks or Cavs or the field right now?
I think I'd take the field. It just feels like there's more higher variance there for any team to find a way to pop, because neither the Knicks nor the Cavs have looked as dominant, to be honest with you. I think the Cavs have looked okay. We know they were dominant last year, so I think that's kind of this baked-in perception that they're going to be really good. They're going to be okay. They're going to figure it out. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case. And the same thing with the Knicks. I wasn't a believer going into the start of the season, and they've lived down to expectations. So, as good as Jalen Brunson has been, it's all fine. I just don't think that they're necessarily a true powerhouse the way we've seen in years past.
Yeah, for Cleveland, obviously injuries have derailed their season. Garland is hurt again, but do you really expect or trust them to stay healthy? That's sort of been their thing, is not being healthy. I don't think that the Cavs I don't think they get healthy and stay healthy. And so that's my biggest thing against, and just something feels off there. I think they need to mix things up in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they do between now and the trade deadline, but if they don't, if this is kind of the team, then yeah, I think there are some concerns there for Cleveland. And then with the Knicks, I'm with you. It doesn't feel like they're serious. They take too many threes. They don't get to the paint as much. Now they figured out some things with their smaller ball lineups lately, and maybe they can figure things out. The talent is undeniable, and once OG Anunoby comes back, that defense should be better than what it's even been lately. But I trust the Knicks more than the Cavs. But if you're asking me Knicks or Cavs versus the field, I'm taking the field, because we've also seen teams just sort of surprisingly come out and make the NBA Finals over the last few years, whether it was Dallas, a couple of years ago, or Miami in 2023, or the Pacers last year. You look at the West, I don't think we're going to be surprised by who comes out of the West. It's going to be the Thunder, the Rockets, or the Nuggets, probably. The conference that's due to surprise you is the Eastern Conference. And if that's the case, why not the Miami Heat, right? Yeah. I think the Heat are very good defensively. They'll be better offensively. They have the best coach in the NBA, certainly in the conference. I wouldn't sit here and predict that the Heat come out of the Eastern Conference. I don't know that I'm willing to go that far at this point, but I think they're in that group with Detroit and Orlando. Atlanta's probably not quite there yet, and they've got some Trae Young questions, but they're kind of in that group right now, which I think we predicted maybe they can climb into that group, and now I think they're there.
Yeah. I think the knock with Detroit is going to be even similar to what we saw from Oklahoma City in recent seasons.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. They're too young. They figured it out. They just don't have that kind of experience. And you know what? A team is inexperienced until finally they are, and they've got it, and they might just be that good. I don't know. I think Detroit's been excellent, and I don't want to take anything away from what they've accomplished this season, but I think there might still be a missing piece away. That team does not feel the way that the Oklahoma City Thunder.
No. They're beatable, right? Like, that's the thing. Maybe the Heat wouldn't be favored in in a series against Detroit or New York or something like that.
Not, but yeah.
But these teams are beatable, and I don't know that Oklahoma City right now is beatable. And I certainly don't think that if any other team other than Oklahoma City is beating Houston, and maybe no other team outside of Houston and Oklahoma City is beating Denver in a 7-game series, if that team is healthy, right? Like, there are some elite teams in the Western Conference, and there's just not that team right now in the Eastern Conference. And so, who knows what can happen? The last thing that we really need to talk about is, will they make a move? And they could make a move in the middle of this month, in the middle of December, when they can sign somebody to a prorated minimum. But everybody knows that's not what we're really talking about here, David. If there is a move to be done between now and the trade deadline, based on this start, I think the Heat could say, hey, we're better than we thought. No need to shake it up. Or they could say, hey, we're better than we thought. Let's make a run for this thing. It can kind of go either way.
Yeah. I wonder how the front office is feeling right now, and I think something. It almost feels like we're so used to it at this point that we don't even really talk about it. The whole Terry Rozier situation does need some clarity. It'd be great if the league could
That's
kind
another
of
big question.
figure something out and just do something one way or the other. Just let the guy play because you're going to absolve him of whatever responsibility or attachment he had to what was going on, or ban him and give money back to Miami, or just unfreeze that contract so the team can do something with it. One way or the other. Just make something happen, because right now you've got $23 million just kind of sitting there doing nothing, and that's not fair to this group. So the fact that they've achieved this 14-7 record, that they've looked this good and this entertaining, despite starting off the season with Terry Rozier kind of hanging over everything, that's a miracle in and of itself. So as far as whether or not I think that's one of the biggest steps that has to fall before this team can even realistically approach a major move. It's like, what are we doing? What do we have to work with? We don't even know what tools we have in our toolbox.
I don't know if you saw this stuff about Giannis right now, but he's unfollowing the Bucks on Instagram and all this. He's like deleting all of his photos. So we're hitting that stage with Giannis now. Who knows whether or not that? I always make the joke, like, somebody needs to do a study on whether or not any of this stuff actually matters, and if this results in trade requests. But he looks miserable in Milwaukee, and the Bucks stink right now. They just lost to the Wizards last night.
Yeah, that's not going to help.
No, and so my answer to this question is: are the Heat willing to make a move between now and February? If it's for Giannis, yes. And if it's for anybody else, then you have to have a meeting about it. There's no meeting about Giannis. It's just, hey, when do we call and how much of all of our stuff are we offering right away? Because it's Giannis. And he's the perfect player in this system, and he's one of the top 3 or 4 guys in the NBA. And I don't think there's any doubt that you would make the phone call at the very least. Now, to your point, if Giannis does hit that big red button and say, I'm ready for a change of scenery, the first call that the Heat need to make is to the front office, is to Adam Silver, and to tell, hey, do something. What can we do with this Terry Rozier contract? Because if you screwed us first by letting us trade for him while you knew there was an ongoing investigation, you cannot screw us again by not allowing us to at least offer his salary, his expiring salary, in a potential Giannis trade. Because if you get in the way of us acquiring Giannis, then we're going to have real problems. And that has to be the first call this front office makes if Giannis eventually decides, you know what, before the trade deadline, I want to get out of here.
So I would say that when it comes to making moves, because this is what the fan base would really expect, I think the team will only really realistically be making phone calls if a superstar becomes available, or you start to hear buzz about a superstar. Otherwise, maybe they'll take phone calls because that's what they do. But there's no need. I don't think there's any need to kind of push the panic button nor rush into acquiring any kind of role player, because it just doesn't feel. It feels like any team that would be making that sort of move would be trying to do so in order to get some kind of assets back. And Miami has learned that keeping assets is a good thing, and they've been utilizing those pretty effectively.
There's no role player that's on the roster right now that's an odd fit necessarily.
People
in terms of
Nico,
and that was one of our big things that we probably don't have enough time to get to here. But it's like, does Nico eventually turn it around? That is a question. We can predict it, I guess, but we've talked about it enough. But yeah, maybe there's a Nico deal there, but there's some with his contract and whatever. But I don't know. We'll see if the Heat make a move. But to your point, I don't think there's a desperate need for this Heat to shake things up. They just did that, right? Post Jimmy Butler. They've shaken up this roster quite a bit. So I don't think they're in the shake-up mode right now. Right. But if there's a star player that's out there that's a fit for this team and they think, hey, this is what's worth pushing our chips into, in for, yeah. And Giannis is obviously on the top of that list. That'll do it for us today. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Should the Heat make a move? What are your takes from this team after the first 21 games? Do you think the Heat are a real contender to come out of the Eastern Conference? This has been Locked On Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.